A lot of people in my recent video about the Dwarfs versus Slaanesh said that they were the worst faction in the game. Have showed their two worst matchups, which is Slaanesh and Khorne. That being said, though, Dwarfs in Domination do have a lot going for them, and one of the new matchups in particular is pretty good for them for one main reason. Cathay lacks any kind of meaningful anti-infantry armor piercing. In fact, I don't think they have any units which have a direct anti-infantry bonus. So that means the Dwarf matchup could be potentially pretty tough for them. Let's see what I've brought here against a Dwarfen opponent. I've got Miao Ying supporting 3 Celestial Dragon Guard. My idea is to kind of form a little heal box on the center objective and then just, secure this side objective with missile and mobile units. To that effect, got some 4 Peasant Archers. Got some Iron Hail Gunners as well already coming in, and 1 unit of Celestial Dragon Crossbow. I'm already regretting going somewhat elite because my opponent has 10 miners, blasting charges, and 5 with and without. Also up front, we've got a whole ton of dwarf warriors with great weapons, which are going to trade very efficiently, the great weapons in particular, against Cathay and infantry. So that's not great. Some Longbeards to support leadership. And what's the Dwarfen Lord, technically? I think it might just be like a unit of miners, honestly. Yeah, it is, which is kind of hilarious. But yeah, some Grumbling Guard already coming in. Let's look at the reserve armies real quick. For my reserve army, I've got the Righteous Lances of Wei Jin, a single Crane Gun, 2 Jade Lancers, 3 Jade Crossbowmen with shields, 3 Iron Hail Gunners, and 3 Peasant Horsemen. For the Dwarfen reserves, he's got a Cheaped Out Lord, Sky Hammer, 5 Slayers, Longbeard, 2 Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and another regular Dwarf Warrior. And we're back already. Some of those Slayers coming in to help, so it's going to be an interesting situation, certainly. This is a matchup that I'm going to need to workshop a little bit, but right off the bat, I'm thinking, oh, that's a lot of miners. And even though the miners' stats are pretty poor, in this great of numbers, they can get full surrounds on a lot of my armored infantry and other infantry, and especially with the missile focus I've kind of gone with here of trying to outshoot the Dwarves, which I think might be the way for Cathay in land battles, but in Domination, I'm not sure about a Cathayan build that's viable. I mean, we'll see. This one might actually end up working out okay if the Celestial Dragon Guard can hold out, but they're going to get significantly out-captured here by this massive dwarf build. So we're going to send 1 unit of Dragon Guards and some Iron Hail Gunners over to here to try and secure this objective. We're also going to line up the Crane Gunners to try and shoot onto this objective as well. Got some more Iron Hails, so maybe try and form like a good little concave of fire, mess these miners up real good. Obviously, they don't have any kind of missile block chance, and although the Peasant Archers of Cathay don't have the best armor-piercing damage in the world, they can still get some pretty good work done against the non-shielded Dwarfen infantry. I mean, Dwarf Warriors, 85 armor is pretty good, but it is low enough that the non-armor-piercing damage will still do a decent amount, given the variability of the armor rolls. Anyway, so already I've secured that center objective, which is nice because I'm going to need the points. My opponent, there's no way that I have the force capable of defeating this many dwarfs to push my flank objective, so I never thought I'd be split pushed by the dwarfs in Domination, but here we are. Got tons of miners and whatnot over here. The Slayers also supporting, so even if I were to send some cavalry out this way, it's going to be a little bit rough, but thankfully the Crane Gunners can get some pretty good damage on this massive infantry here, and I've also got some Peasant Horsemen I can summon on the side here. We're going to fade back, try and avoid those miners, but my opponent pushing pretty aggressively to try and get into my deployment zone and just start to interrupt there. Dwarf Warriors, yeah, the unshielded variant takes a little bit of damage. It's not nothing, definitely not great, but probably should be focus firing all on 1 unit there. Let's keep it here on the side as the dwarfs advance under heavy fire. Not a typical sentence, but occasionally does happen. And in terms of other matchups, there are other factions which they might have some armor-piercing anti-infantry units, but generally might not have the best tools to deal with hordes of armored infantry. And that really is one thing that the dwarfs have going for them in Domination, is you can bring a double full stack, pretty much, of, like, armored infantry, just about, I mean, as we've seen here, and some unarmored, of course, with the Slayers being mixed in, which will be very important, but some brutal fire coming in from the Iron Hails. I've got the Arwar Longmas on the field, although, again, macro-wise, this may end up proving to be not the best decision. It may be more beneficial just to have more bodies on the ground, but at the very least, it defeated some blasting charges before they were able to get into range there. Other blasting... Oh, no, the Skyhammer coming in here wild and doing some nasty bombing runs on my Celestial Dragon Guard as the Dwarves advance here. Skyhammer dumps all its bombs very quickly, even though it does run the risk of hitting your own troops if you drop the bombs during a pitched melee. But already, these two Celestial Dragon Guard have taken a huge amount of damage. They're able to stabilize their leadership with healing from Miao Ying, but it's not good. Already, my opponent's looking at a pretty strong triple cap. I'm trying my best to advance over on this side. Got some Celestial Dragon Guard here fighting these Slayers. You know, the Crane Gunners and the Iron Hail Gunners firing and trying to advance, but at the same time, there's just so much Dwarven melee infantry here. All of these missile units, again, Celestial Dragon Guard have been forced to kind of fall back here. Skyhammer also firing there into the distance straight into my infantry. The main gun not going to do nearly as much damage as the bombs do. I think that the Gyro Bomber gun might be a little bit bugged out at the moment, but anyway, just trying to outmaneuver the Dwarfs here with these Peasant Horsemen. And that is one weakness, obviously, of Dwarfs, is their low mobility. So if I can cap that objective, maybe before some more reinforcements arrive, that could be pretty beneficial. But, man, ooh, some nice side-shotting with Iron Hails through the side of the advancing miners. Excellent damage. Damage-wise, I'm doing okay, but, I mean, in terms of battlefield control, I have got absolutely overrun by Dwarfs, which is, again, is painful, but it's kind of nice to see, honestly. It does give me hope for the Dawi in the future for various other matchups. I haven't tested that many other matchups yet with the Dwarfs, just because I don't really enjoy playing them that much, but definitely we'll try and get some more in the future. I know there's a lot of fans of the Dwarfs in the community, so as long as, you know, in a tournament setting you're, like, banning Slaanesh and Khorne, you should be able to get away with Dwarfs in a lot of matchups. Kind of remains to be seen, but Ogres is potentially one that, you know, the armored, cheap, you know, shielded Dwarven infantry. I guess shielded doesn't really matter, but that cheap armored Dwarven infantry is a good counter for bulls, generally. And the fact that they have, you know, charge defense on even the basic Dwarf warriors, potentially another matchup that they could do pretty well. But, yeah, my advance here on this side is just being completely counter-pushed by the Dwarfs. We've almost managed to sneak one Celestial Dragon Guard through that objective, and my objective number one kind of capture here is being pushed back. A little bit of miss micro by me. Not really maneuvering my horsemen at all, but they are going to get enveloped there by miners, and just more cheap infantry, more dwarf warriors with great weapons, regular dwarf warriors coming back. And look at this, a great skill play by my opponent. Unsummons the Skyhammer and then summons it back in with his superior supply, and is now going to go for another brutal bombing run, which I don't really have any way of stopping. A little bit of a misplacement there on that Earthblood. I have managed to heal back these Celestial Dragon Guard, as you can see, and long term, they do hold and eventually win on this objective, which is why in land battles, I'm not sure. This, it still just feels like Empire, but worse, though, because you don't have great swords. You know, your rockets don't do armor-piercing damage. Yes, you have shielded ranged infantry, but that's only going to take you so far. I don't know. Maybe in land battle, you just spam Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen and supporting units and try and go from there. And obviously, cannons are going to be a little bit more of a factor in land battles. I think Dwarven cannons probably win that fight, but eventually I'm able to come over here with the Celestial Dragon Guard, a couple Peasant Horsemen, and finally secure this objective and at least staunch the bleeding. If I can manage to cap this second objective here in the center and maybe get these Horsemen around and some other, you know, Jade Lancers and such to capture this objective, maybe we can get the job done, but hard to say. The Dwarves are still pushing heavily into my backline. Just a huge amount of infantry here. Probably, what, 1,000 models or so. Maybe not quite that many, but a lot. You get the picture. Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen are pretty much done for. Yeah, I think they're long gone, actually. But the Iron Hails and the Peasant Archers continuing to just fire in. At this point, I know I'm very unlikely to win this match, but I just want to keep fighting just to kind of see how things go. Get a little bit of practice, and we'll also get some sweet cinematic shots of the Dwarven Slayers duking it out with the Celestial Dragon Guard here. Miners in support as well, and in a saturation engagement like this, it's going to be very cost-effective for miners. We'll see their stats after the fact, but this is one situation where, you know, oh man, look at that brutal kill animation there. She just ripped the life out of that Slayer. That is definitely a terrible end for a Slayer, but anyway. Yeah, in terms of Lord selection here, I don't think, yeah, my opponent never brought his Lord out. It would be interesting to see maybe a Thorek Ironbrow map-wide, you know, cheaped-out build where you maybe just take Rune of Doom only and use it on Domination like this when you have, you know, 30 units, melee infantry specifically, on the field. Get a huge map-wide attack buff to try and cut through some of those last few Cathayan units. It's interesting, though. I do think this mass dwarf infantry definitely could work for them in a number of situations, but we'll see. Riders of Wei Jin coming in with the Jade Lancers, and yeah, typical Domination getting blocked on the charge there, but brutal stuff, I must say. Well played to my opponent there. He's a Chinese language content creator, and yeah, that was disgusting. That felt bad and also good at the same time, if that makes sense. The fact that the Dwarfs were able to win pretty decisively there, and I guess miners aren't necessarily even cost-effective in terms of damage output, but just the volume of armored bodies that Cathay has such a hard time getting through. I love the pick of the Skyhammer, too. I did have the tool to counter it, but I definitely just didn't notice when it was doing its bombing run. My opponent got in and out pretty quick in terms of using up the bombs and then unsummoning it, but yeah, great stuff. Slayer's also getting some pretty nice value. And just overall, the Dwarfs using their tools to great effect. That cheaped out Dwarf Lord there, obviously not showing up. But for myself, Celestial Dragon Guard, I mean, they hold out at the end of the day. One of them ends up paying for themselves for the melee variant. The Celestial Crossbowman, not so much, and definitely in hindsight, I mean, obviously, I can't guess what my opponent's going to take, but maybe just going with a full stack of Cathayan infantry myself and like a couple of key units, maybe balloons or, I don't know, something else to generate harmony. I mean, Dwarfs, in a shootout in the air, gyrocopters will probably beat the balloons if they have enough ammunition. I haven't actually tested that. Maybe I should. But anyway, back to the damage values here. Riders of Wei Jin, definitely not something that I should have taken here. I thought, you know, maybe the armor-piercing damage could screen gyros, but they didn't even do that job very efficiently, so maybe that's on me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one, though. Give you some hope for the Dwarfs. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.